Joanne was deeply hurt after a misunderstanding led to the end of her relationship, which she believed to be the love of her life. Amidst the sadness and disappointment, she decided to seek solace in the arms of her mother. However, upon arriving unexpectedly at her mother's house, Joanne makes a surprising discovery. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda's Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. Joanne had always been a girl with a free spirit and an open heart. At 22 years old, she was a radiant young woman with wavy brown hair and eyes that sparkled with an insatiable curiosity about the world. Her passion for photography led her to explore all corners of the city in search of the perfect shot. It was during one of these photographic adventures that fate decided to play a funny trick on her. It was a sunny spring day, and Joanne had decided to photograph the city's Central Park. The colourful flowers and lush trees created a perfect scene for her photos. While she was focused on capturing the image of a curious little squirrel, she didn't realise she was slowly stepping backward. Suddenly, she felt something solid behind her, and before she could turn around, she heard a surprised shout followed by a big splash. Quickly turning around, Joanne found herself facing a young man completely drenched, sitting in the middle of the park fountain. His face was a mixture of surprise and amusement, and Joanne couldn't help but laugh. "Sorry, I didn't see you there," she said between laughs, extending her hand to help him out of the water. The young man, who introduced himself as Peter, accepted the help with a wide smile. "Well, this is certainly a unique way to meet someone," he joked, wringing out his wet shirt. Peter was tall, with dark, dishevelled hair and brown eyes that sparkled with good humour. At 23, he was an architecture student passionate about design and urban art. What began as an accidental encounter turned into an afternoon full of laughter and lively conversations. Joanne and Peter discovered they had a lot in common, from a love of art to a taste for pistachio ice cream. As the sun began to set, they exchanged phone numbers, both feeling that this unexpected meeting could be the start of something special. In the days that followed, Joanne couldn't stop thinking about Peter. Her mother, Grace, noticed the change in her daughter's behaviour and was quick to ask about the reason for so many smiles. Grace was a 45-year-old woman with a serene beauty and gentle eyes that reflected years of love and dedication to her daughter. She had raised Joanne on her own, the result of a youthful relationship, and the two shared a strong and affectionate bond. "Mum, I met someone," Joanne confessed, her eyes shining with excitement. "He's amazing, funny, intelligent, and just as passionate about life as I am." Grace smiled, happy to see her daughter so enthusiastic. "That's wonderful, dear. I can't wait to meet him." On the other side of the city, Peter was living a similar scene with his father, August. The middle-aged man, with greying hair and a warm smile, listened attentively as his son described the meeting in the park. August, divorced for over 15 years, found joy in his son's happiness. "She seems to be a special girl, Peter. I hope everything works out between you two." In the weeks that followed, Joanne and Peter became inseparable. They explored the city together, she with her camera, he with his sketchbook. Their encounters were filled with laughter, deep conversations, and tender moments. Love blossomed between them like the spring flowers that witnessed their first meeting. When the time finally came for them to introduce each other to their families, both Joanne and Peter were nervous but excited. Grace welcomed Peter with a warm hug, immediately charmed by his gentle personality and evident love for Joanne. Likewise, August was impressed by Joanne's vivacity and intelligence, seeing in her the light that had brought so much joy to his son. Months passed, and Joanne and Peter's relationship only grew stronger. They faced the challenges of adult life together, supporting each other in their careers and dreams. Joanne was beginning to establish herself as a freelance photographer, while Peter was excelling in his internship at a renowned architecture firm. Grace watched her daughter's happiness with a mix of joy and a tinge of melancholy. Seeing love blossom between the young couple, she couldn't help but reflect on her own love life, or the lack thereof. It had been years since she was involved in a serious relationship, having dedicated her life to raising Joanne, Now, with her daughter grown and independent, Grace began to feel the weight of loneliness. Similarly, August, although happy for his son, felt an emptiness in his own life. Since the divorce, he had focused on his career and being a good father to Peter. But now, seeing his son find love, August wondered if there was still a chance for happiness for himself. Summer was at its peak when the first dark cloud appeared on the horizon of Joanne and Peter's relationship. It all started with a misunderstanding. Joanne had planned a surprise for Peter's birthday, deciding to show up unannounced at the office where he was interning. When she arrived, she saw Peter chatting enthusiastically with a female colleague, laughing and looking very comfortable. Joanne's heart tightened. The colleague was attractive and clearly had many common interests with Peter, insecurities that Joanne didn't even know she had came to the surface. Instead of approaching Peter, she quietly left, her mind spinning with negative thoughts. In the days that followed, Joanne became distant and distrustful. Peter, not understanding the sudden change, tried to get close, but each attempt seemed only to make things worse. The tension between them grew, fueled by silence and unspoken assumptions. Finally, on a rainy night, the emotional storm that had been building up exploded. Joanne confronted Peter about what she had seen, accusing him of betrayal. Peter, shocked and hurt by the accusation, tried to explain that the colleague was just a friend, that they were working on a project together. But Joanne, blinded by insecurity and fear, did not want to listen. "It's over, Peter," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I can't stay with someone I can't trust." With those words, Joanne walked out of Peter's life, leaving him stunned and heartbroken. The days that followed were dark for both of them. Joanne isolated herself in her apartment, alternating between moments of anger and deep sadness. Peter, on the other hand, desperately tried to get in touch, leaving messages and calls that went unanswered. Grace, seeing her daughter's suffering, felt powerless. She tried to comfort Joanne, but she knew there was more to the story than her daughter was willing to share. Determined to better understand the situation and, if possible, help resolve the misunderstanding, Grace made a bold decision: to contact Peter's father. August received Grace's call with surprise. The two had never met in person, but they shared a concern for their children's happiness. They agreed to meet at a local cafe to discuss the situation. The cafe was a cosy place, with dark wooden tables and the comforting aroma of roasted beans in the air. Grace arrived first, nervous but determined. When August walked in, their eyes met, and something unexpected happened. It was as if a gentle electric current passed between them. They sat down and began to talk about Joanne and Peter, but the conversation soon flowed to other topics. They discovered they had much in common: musical tastes, a love for travel, and a shared passion for gardening. The hours passed without them noticing, and when they finally looked at the clock, they were surprised to see that the entire afternoon had gone by. In the days that followed, Grace and August continued to meet under the pretext of discussing how to help their children. But with each encounter, it became increasingly clear that something was growing between them. It was a connection that neither of them expected, but which both secretly longed for. One evening, Joanne went to her mother Grace's house without warning. She entered using the spare key, cheerfully calling for her mother. But what she found left her speechless. In the dining room, illuminated by candles and with soft music in the background, were Grace and August, holding hands, looking at each other with unmistakable tenderness. Upon seeing Joanne, they both started, their faces a mixture of surprise and guilt. "Mum! Mr. August!" Joanne stammered, unable to process the scene before her. What is going on here?" Grace stood up, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Joanne, dear, I can explain." But Joanne didn't stay to listen. Feeling betrayed and confused, she ran out of the house, ignoring her mother's calls. Her thoughts were in turmoil. How could her mother be involved with the father of her ex-boyfriend, Peter? Wasn't that some kind of betrayal? Joanne wandered through the streets trying to make sense of her conflicting feelings. She felt betrayed by her mother. But as she walked, memories began to surface in her mind. She remembered all the times she had encouraged Grace to find someone, to not live her life alone. She recalled the happiness she felt when she met Peter and how she wished her mother could experience something similar. And then, the realization hit her. She was being hypocritical and selfish. With this new perspective, Joanne returned to her mother's house. She found Grace sitting on the porch, her eyes red from crying. Without saying a word, Joanne sat next to her and hugged her. "I'm sorry, Mum," she whispered. "I was selfish. You deserve to be happy just as much as I do." Grace looked at her daughter with love and gratitude. "Oh, honey," she said, "I never wanted to hurt you. August and I, it just happened. We found each other while trying to help you and Peter and—" Joanne smiled. "And you fell in love. I understand now. And I'm happy for you, Mum. Truly." Inspired by her mother's romance, Joanne slowly began to come out of her cocoon of sadness. A close friend, worried about her state, decided to investigate on her own. She discovered that the other woman Joanne had seen with Peter was, in fact, a committed co-worker who was helping Peter plan a romantic surprise for Joanne. When Joanne learned the truth, she felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under her feet. The realization of her mistake hit her with full force. She had allowed her insecurities to destroy something precious, hurting not only herself but also Peter, who did not deserve her distrust. With a heart heavy with regret, Joanne decided she needed to make things right. She spent days rehearsing what she would say, trying to find the right words to express her remorse and ask for forgiveness. Finally, gathering all her courage, she went to Peter's apartment. Peter opened the door, his eyes revealing a mix of surprise, pain, and a glimmer of hope. Joanne, with tears in her eyes, poured out her heart. She explained the misunderstanding, admitted her insecurities, and asked for forgiveness for not having trusted him. "I was a fool, Peter," she said, her voice trembling. "I let my fears blind me to what really mattered, the love we have for each other. Can you forgive me?" Peter was silent for a moment that seemed like an eternity. Then slowly a smile began to form on his lips. "Joanne," he said softly, "I never stopped loving you. Of course I forgive you." The embrace that followed was one of relief, love, and silent promises to never let misunderstandings come between them again. Joanne and Peter spent the night talking, laughing and crying, rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. That night, Joanne, Peter, Grace and August gathered for dinner. What could have been an awkward meeting turned into an evening full of laughter and affection. They shared their stories, their misunderstandings, and finally, their happiness at being together. As she watched her mother smiling beside August and felt the warmth of Peter's hand in hers, Joanne realized that life sometimes takes unexpected paths. What had started as an accidental meeting in a park had transformed into something much bigger, an unusual family but full of love. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.